everybody. Welcome to the Onyx Pass Twitch channel. I'm Dixie Cochran. I will be moderating this panel. We are having a discussion about the Crossroads Continent, which of course is our very own Rich Thomas's personal D&D world, full of all kinds of things that you can find in a normal D&D game and a lot of things you can't, like, quack foo. My pronouns are she, her, and let's just go around and do a little bit of introduction. Travis, who are you?
Oh, hello. My name is Travis Legge. My pronouns are he, him, or they, and I write stuff and do some work with the 5th edition of the Open Game License, which I've been helping Rich, working with Rich, getting the Crossroads Continent together into that framework. And also doing tech on this stream and noticing a thing I'm fixing.
Oh, okay. Well, you fix your thing while we go around everybody else.
All upside down?
Behind the scenes.
Nothing so fun.
My name is Eddy Webb. I pronounce her he, him. Kind of wish Travis had just stopped with I write words and then ended his introduction there. That would have been funny, but
Next time, Gadget.
I'm one of the in-house developers at Onyx Path Publishing, and I am one of the people who have managed to actually get a chance to play with the peoples of the Crossroads Continent.
Totally. Jack?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jack Berkenstock, longtime friend, been on the cast a couple of times. I'm the executive director of the Bodhana Group, of course, nonprofit using gaming for therapy and skill building, but also very fortunate to not only play in the Crossroads Continent setting, but also be one of the first people, Rich ran for in a very long time, which was awesome and very, very special. But thanks for having me back on.
Of course. Before we get on to the man of the hour, I will say that, as Travis said in the chat, if you have a question during the panel at any time, please feel free to preface it with question in the chat. I will try to get to them at the end. Sometimes we will answer your question just through conversation. So if you get skipped, that's why. Past that, let's let Rich introduce himself and also tell us a little bit about what the Crossroads Continent is.
Okay. Well, thank you, Dixie. My name is Rich Thomas, he, him, and I am CEO and founder and creative director of Onyx Path Publishing. In this context, though, I was the demonic DM, they used to call me, back in the day when I ran the Dungeons and Dragons world for many years, from high school all the way through till I moved down to Atlanta to work full time at White Wolf. So during that the intervening years, a couple of times played in the same world as the editions of D&D changed, and with the onset of 5th edition for Dungeons and Dragons, I found that was a good match for the kinds of 1st edition plus roots for the Crossroads Continent and the way that we played our games. And so talked to Travis about how could we do something with this to make it into 5th edition, and from there had a great game at the Save Against Fear convention one year. I think was it a Saturday night or Friday? I think it was a Saturday night.
It was a Saturday night.
It was 2019. The land time forgot.
Yes, before the bad times when the potatoes grew no more. We got together, and Eddy and Dixie were both guests at the convention, and of course Jack ran it, and we were also joined by Mr. Neil Raymond Price. I'm Captain James Kirk, and
for those who don't know, actually someone that we know named James Kirk, not the fictional James P. Kirk.
Although I could wish for that so sorely. I'm here to play. So great.
You should write Star Trek for him someday. That'd be great.
It would have fit in many ways. Yeah.
Yep. And Jack's lovely companion Jen was also played in one of her I think first times doing a real D&D thing, was it?
It was actually her first ever D&D. The only she had played Call of Cthulhu and Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Which that's not too bad of a port. Yeah.
You were her first D&D rules experience.
Yeah, and it was a really great time. I had asked these specific people, because I knew that if I screwed it up, they wouldn't hurt me or laugh at me for too long. After so long of not DMing.
I mean, you do sign our paychecks, so. But no, it was a really fun, friendly game.
I don't think anything would stop Neil.
That is true.
From jumping
that's accurate, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has no self-preservation instinct. So, but it was I had a really good time. We played up until the point where everyone was so tired they were having trouble focusing, and then brought it to a dramatic close as quickly as possible, and went on to then work further with Travis to put together the Peoples of the Crossroads Continent, which was it started as a little handout I gave to the players of this game, so they would know what they could play in the Crossroads Continent. So naturally, most of them decided they would pick the fringe character types. So we had we had a Manticore, we had a Sea Elf, which I never had anyone play a Sea Elf before. We had Travis, what are we calling the insect guys these days?
Oh, the mantids.
Eddie was a mantid. I think Dixie's might have been the most straightforward character of and her character Jane, who was a halfling raised by dwarves. But ultimately, what was amazing to see was the two people who decided to play ducks. And ducks are one of the many peoples that I've brought over from other sources and made woven into the Crossroads Continent and what it's all about. So having James and Neil meet for the first time at the table and immediately forge a bond, an unbreakable bond of potentially con man noble and definitely musically oriented bard Harold was absolutely hilarious.
When you were drawing all of our characters after that, like definitely every time any of the ducks came up, Neil was like tagging James, and I'm like, I don't think y'all talk outside of these characters.
Well, no, that's who they are. They found their true selves.
Yeah, like they formed some kind of strange duck bro bond that like cannot be severed.
Duck bro bond. Oh my god.
So that's why everything's there, and of course we're Travis and I are continuing to work on the Crossroads Continent in our huge amounts of spare time.
Right.
All
that idle layabout that we normally do, we've decided to back burner a little bit of that so that we could do some work.
So the inception of this, Rich, is that it was your home game for many, many years, right? This is your land you dreamt up,
right?
10 years ago when you were in high school, right?
There you go, Dixie.
Those checks coming in.
It was actually at the dawn of the D&D era. When I started playing D&D, we were waiting for the second of the new pamphlets to come out. I think it was Blackmore we were waiting for.
Oh wow!
Looks like great books. Wow.
So about a year, the Dungeon Master was running at that time. He was a senior, and we were sophomores and juniors and stuff. He left, leaving us with a hole to fill of who would dare take over as Dungeon Master after the amazing Robert. And a couple of us tried different things, and I tried one, and fellas had a great time. And it was an all boys high school. Fellas had a great time, and we just kind of continued it for the next 3 years. And I went to college, art school, about 10, maybe 15 minutes away from my high school. And so I would go back to go to the same club that played D&D, try to do that once a week and continue on the game. And at the same time, we were building up a group of players who were in college or going into, ultimately they were all college students. And that became the home game where we continued on until 92. It was basically a weekly game until 1992.
That's so cool. So, because we're doing the history first, then the rest of us can start chiming in. What things did you pull from to make the Crossroads Continent, and what is a bit of the history of the actual place, the Crossroads Continent, as you have written it?
Well, oh boy. Well, I'm working on a doc. I'm starting a doc right now that is compiling the, I don't know, 6 or 7 notebooks of the history of the Crossroads Continent. Because the fact of the matter is you want to come up with a cool adventure for your group. And so you throw a bunch of stuff together that you think would be cool for them. Maybe they've said, oh man, we really love to fight ogres or something like that. And you kind of play that up. And then you make that work into the world. Like, why are there ogres? Where did I send you to find ogres? You found the pinky ring of Snargle. Well, that's not an ogre thing, but it was, but the ogre, the ogre had it around his neck. Okay, so blah, blah, blah. And what did this pinky ring do? And you kind of build it and just extrapolate a lot of the times based on what was exciting or fun for the people playing. I created an artifact specifically because one of my players would not stop singing a song he made up about it. We had a scene where this was a big deal back in the day. Switching alignment was a massive thing. Yeah. You went from one alignment to another, and he was the first one to ever do it. And he did it because he was tempted by the one evil character. He was in the good group, tempted by one of the evil character to join him. And we did this is when Empire Strikes Back came out. So it was like an underground fortress with a long thing that he was trapped on. And then the villain stood in the thing all in black and said, "You can join me." And rather than, saying, "No, that's impossible," and diving off the edge.
Wait,
our guy Sweet Pea
or something? No.
Our guy Sweet Pea went, "I'll do it," and switched alignment right there, and then regretted it because he wasn't having fun being evil when all the other guys were running around doing the adventuring that he had been part of previously. I'm like, well, lean into it, do more evil things. Oh, I don't really want to. You know what I need? What do you need? I need yin yang. I need yin yang, the magic flail. This is how he talked. I'm not making this voice up. So what are you talking about? Yin yang, the magic flail for me. And he would sing it over and over again because he wanted to switch back to good. And I'm like, I could kill you at this point. Like,
it would be easier. It would just be easier.
Yeah, you've already gone over to evil. Now you're going to go to good. And
wow.
And so we got the magic flail enabled him to switch back and forth because it was the bows, it was yin and yang. So that was the major artifact that he eventually got, so he could play his character the way he wanted to, and all because he just wouldn't shut up.
I love that I asked Rich what his influences were when he chose to create this world, and the only anecdote he had was yin yang, the magic flail.
Empire Strikes Back was also.
Okay.
I did give you that. So
two
influences to do this, to engage as a dungeon master and tell these stories, were all the stories that I'd read and been excited about and enjoyed growing up, from comic books to Robert E. Howard Conan, Elric, and all the Michael Moorcock books with Corum and Hawkmoon. Actually, I think we had a character. One guy named himself Dorian Hawkmoon because, you do as teenagers, and then of course amazing, wonderful sword and sorcery movies that were coming out during the 80s. Of course, the greatest of which was The Sword and the Sorcerer, with the giant fork sword that fired off its tines.
Oh my God.
See, I thought you were going to say Beastmaster, and I'm a little sad that you didn't.
No. There's only one thing I like about Beastmaster, and she's a lovely woman who just passed away. So I'm not going to.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear that.
Remember, within the last year, it was Tanya Roberts. She was wonderful.
I didn't know that she had passed away. That's
yeah.
I just remember Kono and Poto. They were my favorite thing when I was a kid.
No. It was a glut. It was a glut of really bad films. And again, I maintained the Sword and Sorcerer stood above them all, waving that big sword.
Didn't that one also have Richard Mall?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, he was
Oh,
Mole
yeah.
from Night Court. He played
Mhm.
a weird, like, covered, like, thing. It's
The major villain, right? And then his minion Cromwell, I think it was, who was a wonderful character actor, played him. And they had all the weapons that, like, they would attack, and he had staff, but then the staff, he'd do this and a blade would come out of the staff. You know, it's just like, we got to get those into our D&D game. I mean, that's anything that we say you've got to get that into your D&D game. That's it. You know, that's the influence.
I legit feel like this is turning into they came from the Cyclops' cave panel.
Well, you're not that far off, are you? But yeah, so that was kind of the time zone. The games, you know, like I had both Howard the Duck and Duck Tower in mind for bringing ducks into the world, because I greatly enjoyed seeing what other people's games were going on. There's a lot of stuff that I was influenced by that was in gaming beyond D&D stuff, articles that were in Dragon Magazine that were way variant, never actually got put into the mainstream D&D. I got them in there, don't you worry.
Did you have jesters?
That was an option. And in fact, one character did play a jester, but we at that point, that particular issue was way back in the stacks, and I just kind of winged it for what he could do. He only had one arm, so his juggling was kind of repetitive, I'm afraid, but it was good. Yeah.
So Travis, when you came into this, how was it to convert, you know, years and years of notes to more of a 5e situation?
Well, it was a really interesting process, and thankfully I will ever be in Rich's debt for going through and already doing most of the sort of organizational work before I really had to like do work on it. Now I have seen like all the there's oodles of notes in this shared Dropbox that we have, and drawings that I'm fairly certain Rich was still like attending high school when he made, and just all this really, really cool stuff in there that I can always go back to. But Rich did me the very strong kindness of organizing it very well by the time we got to like the actual production side. For me though, one of the most, I guess, exciting, and the thing that really lit my fire about it, Rich and I talked about it a little bit at PAX Unplugged, but then the following midwinter, him and Matthew and I grabbed some dinner and just spent like 5 hours talking about like the, you know,
they were closing up and asking us to leave.
And we got thrown out of the restaurant. But yeah, just talking about the specific adventures and the stories and how that progressed. And so that was not only was that extremely fun to just be able to sit and absorb, but really did a good job of sort of painting the epic scale and epic nature of it, and setting it up very much. One of the things that I find most fun, and it speaks to, I think, the origin of it being, like Richard said earlier, a place where you're letting your friends bring what they want to have fun with to the table, right? And so having a world where that's sort of baked into the mythos at its core is very cool. So there's a built-in reason why pretty much anything can show up, because this is sort of a place where that happens, where all these portals, you know, wind up opening up to, or people wind up getting waylaid there for one reason or another. It's just sort of an accepted fact. So you get to like dive right into the cool stuff without having to do any unfun finagling of lore, right? Like, oh, I painted myself into a corner over here. How do I get rid of that? You don't have to worry about that there.
Right.
And so having that was also super exciting, you know, and a lot of it, I'm very fortunate too, in that, you know, Rich has, you know, several years of this setting together, knows exactly what's going on with it. It's all up there. So all I really need to worry about is system translation issues for the most part. And once in a while it's like, oh, hey, maybe it'd be cool if we took X and did Y with it because of the way the system works now. And those conversations are always very fun too, is where sometimes Rich and I go back and forth about like, how do we take this idea that doesn't really exist in the current system and still be true to that idea, but make it function with the nuts and bolts that we have. That part is super exciting and super fun for me.
Yeah,
totally.
I just passed over the rough doc for the magic items for the Crossroads Continent. That I think will probably wind up being the next thing that we put out for it. And there's sections in there where I just say what I did with it previously, and then write in all caps, Travis.
I feel like I do that a lot on our games like Essence, in that I'll like look at Monica and Neil and be like, there should be a charm that does this, make it happen.
Right.
And then they do, because they're awesome at their jobs. But in that moment, I'm just like, it should do this. Make it do the thing. You can make it do the thing, right?
You can do the thing.
Do the thing. So Jack, what's your history with Crossroads Continent as a concept and as a game?
Well, I mean, as far as like history and such with it, I played the Manticore, like the lion-y character.
Was that your first time playing? Your first time like
that was my first.
Okay,
yeah, that was my first time playing it. Was there that it was kind of like, hey, here, go ahead, check it out. And it was, it was a very special thing just because of when we were doing it. Was saved because that was the year that we had like 15 different designers coming down and joining us.
Yeah.
I have to say, one of the things that even with that brief kind of, and then hearing the backstory behind it kind of as a lead in, I love that idea of, when you play most of these like prefab sets, because I've been playing RPGs for like almost 40 years, and like going in and like, here's the module setting, here's the thing, I often find that a lot of traditional module settings and stuff like that are so like cut and paste. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, we need this trope or that trope or this trope. But I think that the one thing that I really love as an energy is you can tell when you're reading through some of these descriptions in this book, you're like, oh, this is something that had to be created by a bunch of goofballs at a table, just being stupid and just gaming for fun because they wanted an excuse to throw in like Big Trouble in Little China or, something in a different way. I mean, that's not a direct example, but so that's one thing that attracted me to it was like the variety, but also knowing that just in the very fabric of it, it was different looking through a lot than what I'd see in a traditional product where they sit there and instead of I constructed inside of a 3 to 6 month period, this was built by people and by the drama of the story as it went through. So it's much, again, and we'll probably talk about this, and I'm hoping on stealing thunder or nothing, but it's so much more organic. So even the world breathes more than it does in a traditional, well, what might make for a good story? No, you were telling a good story. So that's how it made it into the game. So it's much more alive. That's what kind of drew me in. Like never having seen the world or anything when I sat down to play it and just having the description that Rich sent, I was like, oh, I can fit myself into this so easy. Like, thanks for this bucket o' Legos, Rich. You know what I mean?
Now, I will say that I think you just stole my point from last time that we all talked, because that's what I was going to say. Rude.
Did I say
Yeah, no, like that's what I mentioned last time that we all talked, is that like it did feel super organic. The city feels very lived in. The setting feels very lived in. Because you've been working on it for so long, everything has a history, as opposed to like if I open a brand new D&D module and I'm like, it's a tavern. That's all I know about it. It's a tavern.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm like, hey, what does this tavern and the city with a name do? And Rich is like, oh, there's 18 things that have happened here canonically that I can tell you.
The Tavern of the Crystal. Oh,
yeah, exactly.
Barmaid is Lily too. It's actually Lily's daughter.
See, Rich knows.
Lily too. It's like an Audrey too. Is that like?
Yeah. Well, it's generational. That's kind of one of the things you had to do. I just worked it out, and actually, I've been playing D&D for 45 years.
Wow.
Right now,
technically,
it was beginning of November
29.
that we started playing D&D.
Nice.
Yeah, no, but like that's one thing that I love about the city with no name, which is the kind of like main city in the setting, is that it does feel lived in. It feels organic. Like I feel like most cities in fantasy games are laid out in such a way as if they were made 10 years ago by a really, really good urban planner. And that's not what a city that's like 500 years old would look like. If you look at any city in the world that is that old, like that's not what they look like. They've been, built on top of each other and torn down and rebuilt and this, that, and the other. So, Eddy, I know that your first time playing was also with the Save Against Fear, right?
Yep.
So what are some of your takeaways, especially since you played one of the more esoteric characters?
Meant it. To kind of build off both of your points, I mean, one of the things that I really dug about when Rich pitched this is that I feel like there's an energy in late 70s, early 80s gaming that I gravitate to, because fantasy wasn't codified then, right? When D&D just first started, fantasy was Robert E. Howard, fantasy was, Hawkmoon, and it didn't really all jive together.
And Lord of the Rings, of course.
Right, but that was one piece of it. It was not really dominant of a fantasy staple as it is now. Elves weren't a default assumption necessarily. Hell, elves didn't come out until like later editions of the game. So the idea that there's this energy of like, sure, we can crash a spaceship into this fantasy world. Why the hell not? And D&D did that. That's an official module in D&D.
Expedition to the Barrier Peaks.
Yeah, which I have run in Pugmire, and Pugmire honestly came from some of that kind of Game World late 70s dynamic of why isn't it? Why can't we do this? So the organic component is certainly a part of it, but also there's a fine balance between kitchen sink and growth that I feel like the Crossroads really hits. And so when Rich first pitched this to me, like, hey, do you want to play this game? I was excited for that, but also because I had run Rich in a couple of games by that point, but I never actually played in any of Rich's games. I ran Rich through a V20 game, and I think you were in the Gamma World game I ran at White Wolf.
I don't think so.
You're in one other game I ran at White Wolf.
I definitely said, I mean, maybe, but I know we definitely did Pugmire together.
We did Pugmire together. Oh, no, I remember what it was. Justin was running his game, his kind of fantasy Roman game. That was
the Roman game. Yeah.
Right. So we played together. I've run for Rich. I never actually played in any of Rich's games. So I was like, this is cool. That's the one thing we hadn't done yet.
No one had except my kids for the last 20 years.
Right. Yeah. So I was like, this is really exciting. And I love playing in games with my friends, especially when we change the dynamics, because I love seeing how they bring worlds to life or how they embody worlds. Because everyone does it a little differently. Everyone has their own approach. Like I've yet to play in a game that Jax runs. So at some point I want to do that too. I have actually played in a game that Dixie ran, and that was really, really fun.
Cool.
So it was. I love that dynamic, and so it was a great opportunity to do that. But then when Rich gave me the list of peoples, at first I immediately saw Duck. And as a Howard Duck fan, I was like, oh, I should do that. And I was like, no, everyone's going to play a duck. I should really avoid that.
Yeah, no, that is why I didn't play a duck. It's because I saw it and I was like, yeah, no, everyone's going to do it. And that's why I chose to bring back one.
That would have been an all duck party would have been awesome.
Yeah, the Quack Pack. Why not?
But then I was looking through the other ones and I was like, I don't think people probably pick the insects species all that often, so I'll try that. And I dug the concept because they were a dash of Vulcan, a dash of kind of hive-mindy character,
and almost naive.
Yeah. I like the idea of they are very insular and almost, well, I mean, they are xenophobic, but so characters that are adventurers are going to be just not really wise to the ways of the world, but they're really smart. So the idea of playing someone who's very intelligent but not world-wise, and I didn't know how I was going to play it at the table. I was like, I had a vague idea in my head, and then within like 5 minutes of me riffing off of Dixie, I became okay, cool. I'm playing that character from Guardians of the Galaxy who just takes everything completely literally.
Right.
Which was very funny because we kind of became a buddy comedy of the like 6.5 foot tall bug that takes everything literally, and the sarcastic, almost like Rocket Raccoon type character of like, come on, you big doofus, like that's not what it meant. Come on, go murder something.
And one thing I have learned, one trick I've learned, especially when I'm playing in a game for a really short period of time, is I try to get some kind of physicality around when I'm playing around the table. whether that's a posture or article of clothing. In this case, it was a hand gesture, was this, because it felt very insecty. And it ended up working really, really well because everyone started doing it all around the table. And I was like,
we knew how to communicate.
Are you mocking me? Are you mocking me?
Yes. I do not understand why you would copy my gestures.
Right. You are not my species. You shouldn't be doing
Well,
such a
it looks very settling, so we figure we need to relax. Does that calm you?
And you're going snick, snick, snick with your claws.
The manticore trying to understand empathy with the, cricket creature was really entertaining. But yeah, I mean, so I do joke there was obviously the people I was playing with. I mean, that's a big part of any game. But again, it was not only that, but then to find out we were actually playing in one of Rich's adventures that Rich wrote in an early example of White Wolf magazine. Was like, that's also really cool. I was like, this is so exciting. So the fan part of me was like, yeah, this is really cool. But it was really good that we spent way too much fucking time role playing. So we're just like, you gotta do the adventure at some point.
Oh yeah, they really loved being in the city. Like they were in the city, having fun in the city. Again, Neil's running scams, backed up by
maybe scams. We don't know.
We don't know. I'm pretty sure they were. I don't think he was a real Duke.
It was just so alive. It was just so fed that all I wanted to do was explore. It was like literally getting dropped down, and it's like 2.5 hours later or whatever it was. Like, oh, there's a quest.
Yeah, Rich had a whole plan. We were gonna fight like a snow dragon, and then instead we just sat in an inn for like 2 hours while Neil tried to, con the inn owner out of a room.
He did successfly got a suite and was able to feed all you guys. But then we went on the adventure, and everybody did what you do in an adventure, and realized that as we were going, I had like 7 more rooms we could go through in this ice cave complex, and went, nah, nope. They are going to be sound asleep by the third room.
7 a.m. Yeah, if like you wanted us to go through all those.
So we had a resolution, and it worked out great.
So what are some things, Rich, you'd like to highlight about the setting as different from your basic D&D setting? Like, what do you think are 2 or 3 of the like coolest things that have broken away from it? Or anybody else that wants to answer, but I figured Rich could answer first because it's his baby.
Well, I mean, for me, it's tough to make that kind of call. Because I love D&D. I loved it when it was the defining moment when we went from playing board and war games to got this new game we did over the summer. Okay, well, what's that all about? Well, you sit around a table and you tell everybody what you're doing. What? And after the first session, I had to play more. Robert, when you coming? When you gonna play? You come to the club and play. So it gave me the chance. Once I started making the world, it gave me a chance to, within that loose framework, or certainly looser than 2nd edition, 3rd edition, as it tightened up and got more complex. In that time period, it gave me an opportunity to give my friends a chance to play through these storylines that they were excited about, came out of the same popular stuff that we were all engaged with at the time. They talk about The City with No Name, which is like sort of the Casablanca of the entire setting. So I'm reasonably sure if you looked in there, you'd find a big fat guy in a white suit who ran a bar, and his little sidekick. Yes, I need this little halfling.
Quick, Johnny.
Yes, he's a black bird, sir. But the whole thing of that city being around, it was the first place that the very first players walked into was the Black Dog Inn, and from there, years and years and years later. So my inspiration was something like Lankmar from Fafhrd the Grey Mouser, which one of the things is very gratifying, and thank you so much, all of you, for saying this. Is it it seems like when I was reading about Langmore, that's how I felt about that. And for you to feel that way about City with No Name is a huge compliment. I really do appreciate that. That's lovely. Because now for me, it's just that place that I know. And if you said, Rich, we need to play a game of D&D, or we'll shoot you in the head, I'd start you in the City with No Name.
It's an odd request.
Well, we might be on a raft or in a prison. I don't know.
Right.
You know, our plane went down. We got to eat somebody. It's going to be you if you don't give us a good adventure.
Over in the corner.
Yeah.
You roll these dice.
It's like, yeah, it's like a little puppet, and he's roll the dice, cut off your hand, one or the other.
Rich, I don't want to game with you anymore. Just to be clear,
Well, Eddie, we will always choose roll the dice. So,
wow, this got dark.
yeah, well, it's getting late. It's getting late in the season. But yeah, so I mean, I could do, and I have done, simply spontaneous adventures in the City with No Name because I know it.
Yeah, totally. That is part of why when I run games, I tend to run things like Pugmire and Mao because I'm so like I know them so well, or I try to run them in like cities I've lived in if I'm doing a like urban thing. And honestly, it sounds like you probably lived in the city longer than you've lived in any actual U.S. city.
Yeah, I mean, different times in Philadelphia, and honestly, going downtown Philadelphia, wandering around those areas, there's always an idea in your head, that this going into this alleyway, that's what it's like to go into an alleyway, in the bad section of town, which, Philadelphia is the bad section of town for the City with No Name.
All of Philadelphia?
All
That's
of
a big city.
Yeah, but it's, it's real bad too.
There's these giant metal dragons that run you down. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of those weird things about, I mean, not to go too much onto, Dixie's point earlier, but, I'm even thinking of those weird, like, you look at those old settings, it's like this tavern that's been around for 500 years. And I'm like, man, the mall I used to hang out with like 25 years ago, they cut the middle of it out. Yeah. Like in Reading, at Fairgrounds Square Mall, they literally bulldozed just the middle. So they kept like the coat factory in the old like store, and it's like
the anchor stores
that now, right? Yeah, exactly. Right. And I'm like, just fascinating things like that. I'm eager to, dive in more than just the little playthrough that I had, just to find all these other things and even further how your players take them and then add to them as well. It's like exquisite role play, like instead of like exquisite poetry, it's just this weird building on other people's cool, like what do we say? Like GM secret. Most of your greatest ideas don't come from you. They come from your players in these weird things.
That's exactly right.
In hushed whispers at the end of the table, and you're like, holy shit, that's good. I got to write that down.
Right.
So like, I knew it. I'm like, you wrote it. Like, what are you talking about?
Well, I mean, how old were you when you heard the first rules for improv comedy or improv acting? And,
Yes,
and but and and yes and just how do you do that, and looking and saying with a feeling of familiarity, because that's how we played. Like there were the DMs who went, no, like this, and there were certainly moments where I said, you can't do that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Just stop it. Just stop it.
That's
but my character would do that. I don't care. It's dumb. Convincing the half ogre who's not too bright that there's treasure at the bottom of the ship you're sailing on in uncharted waters. No.
That was really specific.
Yeah.
It was a hypothetical example.
That's not hypothetical. That happened. And his excuse was, I'm chaotic evil. I would do, that's the sort of thing I would do. And I'm like, you wouldn't, because you'll drown.
Right.
You're not chaotic stupid.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite questions to ask when I am running a game is, what do you think happens? Because that's the best answer when you're not sure how to go about something. Because usually your player has an idea of what they think is going to happen, and it's cooler than what you thought of. And so you just go with it.
That's actually why I tend to like running mysteries when I run games, because there's the players are naturally going to go, okay, well, we'll put the clues together, and this is probably what happened, and then I could just kind of change 2 or 3 things and go, yes, that's totally the answer.
How deductive of you.
Good job, Sherlock.
Yeah, no, I think mystery is a huge part of it. You know, you want to give. I mean, it's why there's like little puzzles that people do and things like that. I was always giving out handouts of you know, strange languages they had to decode, and you know, maps that were partially ripped that they had to figure out what the other half would mean and things like that. So, yeah, I think knowing that you want to engage different kinds, and this has all been codified like by, you know, by so many writers at this point, knowing that there's different play styles at the table, right? Like we knew it because we were focusing on the various players. I don't want Dan to get upset. I want him to have some fun, but Adam isn't really interested. He's there for the social thing and for the fights. He really doesn't care about the rest of it. He doesn't want deep story. He's not really even that into role playing. He just loves being around with these guys, the people he's playing with, which at this point, you know, was a bunch of people. And wants to, you know, it's the old, you know, tell me what I need to roll.
Yep.
Whereas I had backstories written up by some of the players for their characters that, you know, I grew up here. This is why I'm like this. I was interested in this. And it was like, oh, well, great. And you said you had a friend when you were younger. What was their name? And I take a little note of that, and then Jackie, you're trapped. Need a break?
No. It's just a real quick requester thing, but I didn't know about timer or everything.
Yeah, we only got about 10 minutes left, so we can just kind of start wrapping up.
I did have one weird question, if I may ask, even though my own impetus
Please
here.
go.
Was there something that because there had to have been, like, what is your favorite thing? And I don't know if it's a weird question. Was there something like, what was your favorite thing that ironically was like too silly? Like if it was like the general from Monty Python was like, stop that. You're not going to do that while I'm here. Like, what was too silly to make it into Crossroads Continent? I'm just curious with all the stuff that you were kind of yes-anding in. What was something
Talking dogs was way too silly.
Well, I mean, no, like I said,
Doc's fine. Doc's right up.
A lot of it was stuff that we could, if the group was into that kind of, you know, something a little bit sillier or odder or whatever, you know, we roll with that. I never did a silly storyline, right? Like if there was silliness, it came out of the players playing and having fun and getting goofy with it. And so they might find something particularly silly and we would run with it. But it was rare that the story itself went anywhere that wasn't, you know, like, you know, ultimately some of them became epic. Some of them were just little adventures, like hey, we're here tonight, we're just gonna have a good time. But it's really hard because, you know, I mean, it's been a while, Jack, and trying to remember what particularly what somebody from, you know, high school wanted to throw into the thing that I just went, no, not in my world. Is very hard to think of that stuff because we moved it aside. We passed by it and it kept going.
Yeah. I do want to go. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just trying to think of an example from one of the influences that I said, no, I'm not using that in this, but I'm not going to get to it. Probably around 8:30 tonight. I'll go.
Oh, that one, yeah.
So everybody follow Rich on Twitter so that when he has the eureka moment, you can be like, I was
inexplicable tweet. Yeah.
So what I do want to do is go around with everybody who's not Rich and say what one of our favorite parts of the setting is, or a thing that surprised us about the setting when we engaged with it. So I'll give all y'all a chance to think for a second because I've obviously been thinking of this already. And I'm going to say that one of something I loved about it was that when I, like, you know, I am a 36-year-old woman, and when I am handed a D&D setting and they're like, oh, this has been going on since, like, you know, the 80s, in my brain, I'm like, oh, it's going to be not my favorite thing. But even back then, I think that Rich and his friends were really good at subverting tropes in a way that
Mhm.
even my home groups weren't. Like my home groups were very like, all the elves are pretty, all of the women are this, and then like seeing that you had subverted what the main humans looked like, and what like it is not all rooted in Western fantasy. It is not all Tolkien-esque. It is not like anything I would have expected it to be based on the influences that y'all had at the time, which I think is just a nod to y'all's creativity. Because seriously, if you hand me most 80s D&D modules, I'm going to find 3 things in it to go at. And I didn't see anything in Crossroads Continent that made me go bleh. And that's,
Well, I'm working on the history. I'm sure you'll find something, Dixie.
and I am sure. I mean, like everything that gets revised has something that, in hindsight, you go bleh at. That's my new phrase now is bleh. But yeah, like overall, the fact is, it's a really diverse game. The culture is interesting. It is not, like I said, it's not all influenced by like white Western fantasy, which I feel like a lot of that 80s D&D was. And if it wasn't influenced by that, they were exoticizing stuff in a weird way. And Crossroads doesn't do that either. And so just like for my modern sensibilities, it was like not that I expected Rich to be problematic. I just like thought that anything coming out of that time period was going to just inherently
Anybody
be
as
problematic.
old as Rich must be some sort of racist, sexist bastard.
I just feel like you know what I mean.
That
Like,
clip
I
is
have-
going to be circulating around Twitter now.
Well, absolutely, because I think one of the things that happened, Dixie, is that some of the early influences were leavened in with things that we saw in real life, and other influences that you don't think about. Like I probably got more of an idea of how fair life might be or might not be by reading, say, Harlan Ellison,
Right.
who has his own issues, but was a huge influence on me in terms of understanding, oh, well, that's really how life is, not this sort of glorified, happy thing that, everybody wants to sell you,
Yeah. I just really appreciated that, and the verisimilitude of the world feeling very organic, very, like the diverse, interesting, and a step up from 90%, if not more than that, of the 80s and prior fantasy people recommend to me. Every now and then my like boyfriend or somebody is like, how have you not read X fantasy classic? And I read like 3 pages and I'm like, because it sucks. Like I don't want to read it.
There's a lot of bad stuff out there.
Yeah. I'm like there's so many books out there by women that I could be reading. Why the fuck would I read this? Anyway. Eddie, what about you?
On that note, I gotta follow that. No. Kind of similar.
I've got feelings. Strong feelings.
Yeah, I'm shocked.
No.
But in a similar vein, one of the things that I really liked about it, those are directed my direct gameplay, but more kind of hearing about it, was the impact that evil characters had on it, evil player characters specifically. Finding that someone played a player character and that became the big bad for another group's dynamic. Like you were saying, having a chaotic evil character trying to do incredibly dumb things. You just don't get a ton of people not only playing evil characters at all, but also living with the consequences of playing evil characters and having those evil characters shape the world. The world itself is not evil, but if you do horrible things, that's going to leave an impact on the people around you and the world. And the fact that Richard's group just kind of rolls with it and goes, okay, this is the thing that happened now. These people died. That sucks. Deal with it.
Was an effect.
Right. And the fact that actions have consequences and evil is not cool, sexy Darth Vader evil, but just people doing some awful stuff is interesting. It adds to that organic depth we've been talking about a lot, in the sense that you can impact the world, but it can be good or bad. And so it made me kind of want to be a little better as a character, because I'd seen, oh wow, there some people really wreck this place as a place. We should
right.
And there's a hole in the wall over there, and that guy's on fire. I think we should probably clean up a bit, maybe.
Yeah,
logically,
logically, it was a good idea.
Jack, what about you?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, a lot. I'm definitely going to kind of say, Eddie took mine, but no. One of the things that really about looking into the setting, and not only the idea of like, the impact of evil on the world or something like that, but one of the things that really, I guess, bothers me when you're doing epic play a lot is with all the RPGs that I played, it was like, we're telling an epic tale, like, shit's on the line when we're in this adventure, apparently. But after we now defeated that earth-shattering epic thing where gods and cosmos and all of the worlds aligned and all the history and future of all of our kind is at stake. But after it's done, that was the thing. No, wait, hold on. Like there are consequences to, and because I talk about this a lot in other different ways of like, if you have a bunch of murder hobos, you should as a GM go, not in our town, buddy. Like you ain't bringing your murder here. Like, but so looking at a world that
we only export murder, we don't import any murder.
Yeah, exactly. We'll send our murderers out, thank you.
I love that concept. That's actually great.
It's only murder if it comes from the murder region of France. Otherwise, it's just reckless homicide.
Sparkling homicide. Sparkling.
Sparkling homicide. Wow.
Oh,
there was a movie that was about a murder society and how they were hunting each other down because they had a falling out. But their whole gig was, we're a murder society, hire us, and we'll do what if there's an entire town like that?
Yeah.
Of assassins and murderers and stuff
so like John Wick, the city.
John Wick, the city, and you go there, you pay whatever you pay, and then they send out their things from there. I bet that city itself would be really, really quiet.
Well, I can imagine the city's so dull. Nothing happens here.
It'd be like my blue heaven.
No, that's one of the big questions. Like, because people, it's I guess going on a totally different topic I could talk about for an hour and a half. It's all difference between
Don't do it, Jack.
Yeah, here I go. When people ask me about the Ghostbusters 2016, they're like, don't you hate it as a Ghostbusters fan? And I go, no, I don't. I identify, though, that it's a different style of comedy. And I think that speaks to a different style of storytelling. Right. Where if you talk about Monster of the Week formula, the evil shows up, we kill or defeat the evil or outsmart the evil. Well, glad we're done with that. But no, wait a minute, though. But if we're talking about like a world is a living thing. A world is like a character. So when you have that world based upon change and the impact or the impetus to change of what those events have been, you give more meaning and style to the city. But I think it also helps people play more deeply than, and again, this is no knock on like, standard like D&D or Pathfinder or whatever. This is not video game role playing, right? This is true depth of storytelling, that when you see those baked in elements, it inspires you, I think, to look deeper into your own play and to how, like, because I think kind of like what Eddie was driving at in a way of, how can I add to this stew that's already been cooked up, right? Like there's so much flavor there. Can I kick it up a notch? Can I give a little bam? Or, how can I take one of those elements and go, let me take it just a step further. I think that brings an opportunity to challenge what most people are given as, oh, I love D&D. How long have you been playing? 6 months? Oh, baby, you haven't seen so much that's out there, but so.
You don't got to be condescending though.
Well, I didn't mean it that way. That's not, but you have no, wow, there is so much ahead.
Right. It's a huge journey ahead of you, more like
I am so excited for you.
Right.
Exactly. But see the potential that's there. So I really do like that the system and the setting shows you what can happen and what can be built over all of those years of contiguous play. When you add on to what you already have, like, don't just move to like the next adventure or the next shell. Like, don't be afraid. I ran a Shadowrun campaign. The whole adventure took place in a 4-block radius. That was the whole campaign. We didn't do anything epic, nothing with world-shattering events or whatever. It was saving, Mama Gonzalez's grandson from the Go-Gangers. That was your mission. So it was people you cared about, and it was a world that changed as you did it. And I think more people need to discover that style of play, because I do think to some degree it's
and people will
not getting taught. Yeah, they will, but I love that it encourages that.
I mean, the flip side of it, Jack, is like, you can also have a completely PvP game for a while there back in the day when I was going back to the high school.
Yeah.
At some point, they decided they would start killing each other. And I once did a tally after like 3 weeks of the play, and they had killed, I think they had killed 24 player characters amongst themselves.
Jeez.
And with the environmental hazards that I had put in, like some giant crabs and crap, I had killed 4.
They just had to get it out of the system. Growing pains, right?
Well, eventually, I let it go for a little while, and then I said, guys, it seems like you're having fun, but there's a lot of people who are frustrated by this play.
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I'm going to make a new rule in my world. You can't kill the other player characters. So no PvP.
So,
But you could do that.
all right, Travis, did you have anything you wanted to add to all that?
Yeah, and just a couple quick things. One is that, and I think it really shows in Peoples of the Crossroads Continent, by the way, which is in print on demand.
Oh, Travis, you're the man.
And over at
Nicely
Drive Thru
done.
RPG. Thank you. I think it really shows, though, in this book, the peoples that are introduced in the setting, and I'm sure this is a sign of refining the idea over several years of play, but they're all introduced in such a fashion that when you look at those people, you know who they are, what they're about.
Mm-hmm.
You have character seeds and character ideas, and you don't have to dig through a pile of exposition to get to it. It's just there, and the identity is clear, and it's really easy
Right.
to identify. And that's a rare thing, I think, in fantasy, especially because you're not leaning on the existing tropes. You're not saying this is Tolkien's elves, but you're saying these are our elves, and these are our different, subgroups of the elves, and you're defining them clearly in succinct ways that are good plot hooks, which is neat. The other thing that I think is really cool about the setting and just kind of made me fall in love with working on it is the idea that because it feels organic, like that plays in the world in a way that maybe it doesn't in certain other settings. Not to pick on, I'll just make Scarred Lands an example because it's not like an official WotC product, right? Scarred Lands has a feel, and it's presented
Is
with
that
a feel.
Onyx Path Pond?
It might be, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've heard that before.
There are certain elements, certain things that you envision immediately when Scarred Lands comes up. But sometimes that can feel a little limiting if you're trying to tell a story. Whereas in a world like Crossroads Continent, where you've got like that built-in cosmopolitan nature of it, combining genres, crossing genres is a feature, not something that you have to do some extra work to. You know what I mean? And I think sometimes with established settings, when you pick them up to make them fit into your table, you have to do a little bit of wiggling to get them to match your play style. And I don't think that's nearly the concern with the Crossroads.
I should also mention before I go to Rich for my final very special question that the illustrator is also quite good.
The illustrator is pretty good, yeah. The artwork's
a hack.
When you bang out a picture a day,
he
does, look at that October coming back to bite me.
He does have a style I've seen before on some Magic cards back in the day. I mean, that is true.
Yeah. A lot of the World of Darkness symbols, for some reason, I don't know. They're all reminiscent. Rich, I have a very special question for you. What do you think high school Rich Thomas would say if he knew that you not only were in charge of a game company, but also had published Crossroads Continent as a thing that anybody could enjoy, any gamer, not just your group?
I think he would say, you had dinner with Harlan Ellison and Michael Moorcock? Woo! I really didn't intend to publish it. It was mostly having played some 5th edition stuff and going, wow, this feels so much more like my world.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sort of digging into it, and that's about the point I think I did my pass by Travis at PAX, where I went, hey, if I was doing a 5th edition thing, would you be interested? Woof, and I was gone. As you've all been in those moments where, I do like just sort of just to see what the who feels what about what, who feels excited about it or whatever. And so it was never really an intention to do it up until the point that the edition came up that I was like, this could actually port really well for, and and weirdly enough, I have this publishing company. So
Just sitting around doing nothing.
yeah,
Like
I was
you
gonna
do.
say, like, there's got to be some perk of having your own publishing company, all right? You publish at least one vanity project. Right, no,
it's
it's
been fun. It's doing the people's
Mhm.
both the art and the writing that I did until I handed over to Travis was boy, what a trip down memory lane.
Right.
Just these characters, because of course these characters were played by these people, and some of these people are people I love very much, and some of these people are gone, and some of the people are, still around to this day, which is really funny. When, hey, check out the thing, I left it on the table, or like at a Christmas party or whatever. I left it on the table. Check it out. Wait, is that my character? What? So that's it's a bit of a perk, but it's also really weird to go back and dig up those old memories.
Still, I think high school Rich would be like, "What the hell? What's so cool?" Yeah,
he might, but he was really even more of a dick than I am now.
I mean, we all were in high school. That's like the point of being a high schooler, right?
Really? So, like, did you get uncover a dragon? Huh?
Like, no, but I published White Wolf magazine for several years. What the hell is that, man?
Ain't nothing. You ain't nothing. You ain't fat.
You work for TSR.
You ain't down with us no more.
I don't even want to hear about vampires unless it's Ravenloft.
I love the idea that 16-year-old Rich would just be like, boring.
Oh yeah. That's why I got invited to all the parties. That was so much fun.
I think that's a good spot to wrap it up. Is sophomore in high school Rich being an asshole.
I really don't want to be 16. I don't want to end now. Like, come on, guys, get me out here. Throw something out we can talk about real quick.
I'm the man now. What? No.
All right, let's go around to say people can find us, follow us, etc., and also a brief kind of end note on this game. So, Travis, I'll start with you because you're right there.
I am Travis Legge. I'm at Travis Legge, like it's spelled underneath my face everywhere on the internets. Next time you'll see me, I'll be on the channel here Saturday tomorrow for Storypath Showcase. We're ending the Dystopia Rising Evolution run. Our last episode is Saturday. Please tune in. It's going to be gory and fun and a grand old time. And then I think I'm announcing right now that Monday we will be starting session 0 of a Storypath Showcase on a special night on Mondays, running Trinity Continuum Anima, since there's this Kickstarter coming out.
I've heard that game's good.
So yeah,
I mean, except for that one chapter about Synestia, it's terrible. I don't know who wrote that.
Heard a thing or two about that. So
she should be fired. Really.
We'll be exploring that on Monday, and so that's where you can find me. And when I'm not doing that, I'll be down in the word mines working on these magic items that Rich has been so kind as to send me.
All right, Jack, what about you?
Nobody does a +5 sword anymore, Rich.
You're right. Jack Berkenstock Jr. here. You can follow me at Bodhana Jack, BODHANA on the Twitters. You can also check all of the great work that we do at the Bodhana Group with therapeutic gaming, whether it is board or RPG, at thebodhanagroup.org. One of the cool things that we have is that we are planning even more fine playtests of our role-playing game system, Branch Riders, being designed from the ground up for therapeutic and beneficial intent. So 8 worlds, you choose. Either way, it makes you better. I'm working on that.
Oh, that's your slogan.
Pretty good.
Slogan.
Yeah. But yeah, it's always fun being on here. We also have a Twitch channel that we just recently launched that we have fixed the bugs too, but we will be having live plays, and some of these fine folks are going to be joining us in the future on some of our shows. So stay tuned to all the wonderful, and as usual, it's awesome to hang with all of you.
I don't mean to bust in here, Jack, but you said that, and I immediately had an idea for a slogan. I just want to throw it out there live. All right.
Please
8
do.
ways to go, 8 ways to grow.
I think he likes it.
That,
History was made.
Write it down.
You've seen it here live, folks.
Yeah, so keep going. I'm
Eddie.
really ignoring everything here.
While Jack Toy doesn't do work on his vacation, I am Eddy Webb.
No, not at all.
You can find me at pugsteady.com. That's Pugsteaty. You can also find me on Twitter at Pugsteady. This is Toy, not the Onyx Pathcast outro. You can also find me at the Onyx Path. You'll see me on Twitch soon, TM. I'm kicking an idea around. I'm talking to Travis about it, and also Jack's been picking me about Bodhana stuff. So yeah, you'll see more of my face probably in the near future.
All right, Rich, what about you?
RichT at theonyxpath.com.
I love you always give out your email address. Like people are just gonna randomly email you. Like
People do randomly email me, and
That's
hopefully
so
I can distribute them out to the people who can actually answer questions.
Moment,
Yes.
please send a self-addressed stamped envelope to.
On page 14 of Lore of the Clans, there's a
Oh god.
okay.
Oh,
This isn't.
In White
Trying to
Wolf
remember that
magazine number 3, you said.
all right. My name's Dixie Cochran. You can find me most places at Dixie Cyanide. You can find us everywhere at the Onyx Path. We're both on Twitter, Discord, the internet. We're everywhere. One thing that I mentioned at the very beginning that we never mentioned during this panel, so I guess you're going to have to buy the book if you want to learn about it, is Quick Duck, Mistress of Quack Fu, one of my favorite characters. So let's
Duke
just
Orange.
you can find about it in the book that Travis is holding up right now, Crossroads Continent. I have no idea
She
where
is.
Travis is on my screen since doing this.
Yeah.
Mistress
Uh,
Quick.
But thank you all for tuning in. This was really fun. I love getting to talk about any of our games, but I think it's really, really cool to talk about one that Rich has been messing with for so long, because that's fun.
Absolutely.
So
Thanks,
thank you
everybody.
all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Make sure you get vaccinated.
Back animal.
Back animal.